Welcome to the Navigating Disruption podcast. This is Mike Klein, along with my co-host, Janet Hitchin. Today we have as our guest AI futurist Dan Sodergren. Dan is a tech futurist and optimist who equips leaders in how to think about the future of work and who trains organizations in how company cultures and technologies, including AI, will change the world in the fifth industrial revolution. He's also an ex-marketing agency owner and serial tech startup founder with companies like HR tech startup YourFlock. Dan is a digital marketing and tech expert who specializes in the future of work and AI. Welcome, Dan. Welcome to our podcast.
Well, it's lovely to be here, and thank you for such a warm and, to be fair, in-depth kind of moment of my life. I really hope you used AI to do that. But of course, me and Mike have known each other for many years. You don't need to use AI. We've known each other, so that's good. But thank you for such a lovely, warm intro.
Well, thank you. And you know, I still believe in NI, natural intelligence, and I think AI and NI can work really well together with the appropriate amount of forethought. Want to get into the conversation here. You know, there's a ton of noise in the AI space, particularly as it relates to business communication. To get us started, what's the most important thing for us to do right now? Or what are, say, the three most important things for us to do right now?
Well, and I've got to be careful with words here, but one of the key things to think about, and I think Wayne Dyer, if you're a believer in these kind of things, but Wayne Dyer said this: change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. My point being here is a lot of people aren't realizing that we are in the fifth industrial revolution. And that's why I talk about it in my book. The reason why I wrote the book, I kind of titled it The New Intelligence, The Fifth Industrial Revolution, is because if you don't realize it's a revolution, you don't realize the speed that this is happening. You just presume it's business as usual. This is not business as usual. It's business as unusual. This is revolutionary times. And if we start realizing it's revolutionary times, we realize certain things about revolutions. Like, revolutions aren't necessarily fair. Revolutions aren't necessarily things that we control. Revolutions are external forces that are beyond our comprehension because we are just individuals that's happening to. If you're in the French Revolution, for example, depending on which part of the French, in fact, most probably wouldn't make a difference which part of the French Revolution you were in, it would be a bit shocking. Now, you may have guessed that it may have been coming, but when it actually happened, the change was rapid. This is the same with, you could argue, reformations and all sorts of things. But the thing that's happening right now because of technology is this fifth industrial revolution is actually quicker. This is an industrial revolution. It's not a political or a social revolution like the French Revolution. And industrial revolutions tended to be slower. They may have taken, several generations. This industrial revolution will take several years, and it's already started. We're most probably halfway through. And if we understand that, then it means that we get the fact that we have to do things quicker than we were most probably wanting to do. Does that make sense? So if we reframe the way that we look at this, it also means that we don't blame ourselves. We don't say, oh, wait a minute, why is the world changing so quickly? It is. It's an industrial revolution. It's the quickest one that's ever going to happen. And so therefore we have to be primed for this. And therefore that's one of the quickest things I think we can think about. The other one is, and I talk about this in my keynotes, and I did the week, is there seems to be a thing right now where we're thinking that AI can do everything, or some people are thinking AI can do everything. And we've got to be careful with this because, like the steam revolution or manufacturing revolution, all these other industrial revolutions, it never presumed that it could do everything, but it fundamentally changed the employee agreement or the social construct behind it. We now have this thing where people are thinking AI is so clever and so amazing. We're believing the hype that these massive companies tell us, and we think it can do everything. That is also a danger. So what we've really got to think about is, what can AI do for us right now? What is the actual business problem that it actually properly can solve right now with its capacities right now? And one of the reasons why we have so much anxiety around this is because people don't know the answer to that. And they don't know for sure. Now, don't get me wrong, things are changing almost every week, definitely every month, definitely every year. So that makes it uncomfortable. But the reality is there's hype and then there's actual ability, just like there is with human beings. And right now, I think there's a lot of people thinking that AI can do far more than it can. But even the fact that it can do the small amounts I know it can do by testing it and continually doing stuff with it. And remember, lots of AI systems are different. All LLMs are different. So again, that makes it more complicated. And that's why I do the trainings on it. We've got to not overplay it. And I think as an industry, and I put my hand up to this, sometimes as AI people, we're like, it's amazing, it can do, it can almost do everything, but it doesn't mean it's good at everything. Let's put it that way. Does that kind of make sense? So we've got to be realistic that the times they are changing and they're changing quickly, but we've also got to be really realistic about what AI can really do right now and really quantify what does it solve right now as a professional rather than en masse for the whole of society.
Well, you've given us a lot to unpack, and there's kind of three things that jumped out at me. One is that you said we're about halfway through. Second, you question the idea that AI can do everything. And then I guess the third bit is, if it, and maybe this is a bit of a hypothetical question, if AI could do most everything and displace most of the workforce, basically, at some point you can't just have AI selling to AI. What are kind of the medium term and long term implications of all this? I guess the first question, though, is you said we're about halfway through this. Why do you think it's halfway?
Well, because I don't think that we are all the way through, hence halfway. I think there's a long way to go. And to be honest with you, this is the thing that gets me the most is that so many people, because I'm a futurist, as they call us, and a tech futurist at that, and an optimistic one. And so people are always saying, oh, where's this going to go next, Dan? What's going to happen next? And I always say, if you're looking 5 years into the future, you're lying. 10 years is absolutely insane. 5 years isn't. And I think we've most probably got, if you were sensible, you couldn't predict more than 2 years. Yeah, but only because of the kind of frameworks and understanding I have, because I've been doing it for more than a decade. We've got to remember that digital transformation is not a new thing.
No.
The idea that computers could do stuff is not a new thing. AI is not a new thing. Machine learning is not a new thing. None of this is new. It's the speed that everyone's adopted this, which is breathtaking, right? Like OpenAI, and again, I could bore you with the geeky details, but the reason why ChatGPT was called 3.5 is because there was 1 and 2 before it, right? There's other ones before it. 3.5 is a random time to bring it out. Now, again, that should, if you think about it, why is it 3.5? And again, don't get too geeky about it, but the reality is that they weren't really planning to give AI to the masses. It was a business decision made by somebody else, and now everyone's playing catch up. OpenAI, there's now 700 million people every week that use ChatGPT. 700 million. Now, that's not a lot in 7 billion, but it's quite a few, isn't it? Yeah. There's 2.5 billion messages that it receives. The amount of data that it gets is almost beyond human comprehension. The reason why I think we're halfway through this is because as more and more data comes into the system, as more and more things happen, it will take at least 2 years for us to get to that AGI moment. But also, the AGI moment isn't important for the rest of us. It isn't. It's not important. If you look
what
at
is AGI for the rest of us? What is AGI?
Well, the idea that average general intelligence, the idea that the AI system would be as clever as any human in anything that it does. Yeah. And even then, by the way, you could argue AGI for a very long geeky time about what people think it means and what it doesn't. It doesn't make any difference to us all, right? Okay, I'll give you a metaphor, perhaps. And again, sorry, this is kind of boring historically, but it's kind of important as a metaphor. When electricity first happened, and we weren't around at the time, but you can look into the history of it. Electricity, when it first happened, it wasn't just 240 volts. In fact, actually, right now in the world, we still haven't decided, hundreds of years on, what the voltage is for electricity, right? What the plug socket size is. It's just mental when you think about it. But it's completely acceptable because that's the way the world is. It's not always homogeneous, etc. Now, when it first started, you literally would have 16 different wires going into different homes with different companies, all vying to provide electricity at different voltages. It's mind-blowing if you think about it, like completely silly. But of course, that's the system. That's capitalism. Is what happens. You have variations and innovations and whatever. At some point, some people decided, or some people won, some people lost. There aren't millions of wires everywhere. It's right, the same principle now with AI. There are hundreds of companies that are providing AI and LLM services. There are tens of thousands of startups in this space. That at some point, because of the nature of capitalism, will become a lot fewer as they buy each other out and do things and vie for the things. But my point is right now we're at that choice where it's not a choice per nation what voltage we use. It's every individual gets to choose which LLM, large language model, or AI system they use for their job. And we forget what a privilege that is. Like, what an astounding privilege. Basically, in the next couple of years, you won't have that choice because they'll all start to amalgamate together. Yeah. Apologies, I've realised this most probably is a bit geeky straight away, but
no, but
let's jump in, right?
This is great because actually we're in kind of the pre-consolidation phase of all this. And, you know, those of us who were around back in 2007 when Facebook showed up, there were lots of alternatives at that point. And, you know, about 2010, all of this stuff kind of came together and you had, you know, basically the 5 or 6 social platforms that we use today.
Yeah, so, and that's why we're halfway through. And that's exactly right. That's exactly right. It's exactly why we're halfway through, right? Because you can predict, you can model out. Look at something like mobile. Look at something like social media. Look at something like computers. Like, people forget, like, I mean, obviously Linux and stuff still exists, right? But people forget that Microsoft was not the only thing that existed back in the day, right? You know, and I don't get me started on what they did to get into that position, but, you know, that's monopolistic capitalism for you. But the point principle behind it, there were loads of players. And so you can look at it and go, wait a minute. He's actually said, by the way, this is the same with things like railway and everything, by the way. You know, there were always players in every field. Look at things like, this is really geeky, but look at things like, you know, radio providers back in the day. This is just mass media consumption models. So you can predict. You can't predict it so well that you've got an instant, but you can look at the data and you go, okay, this one's moving 5 times or 10 times quicker. Demis said a brilliant thing the other day when he said, this industrial revolution is most probably going to be 10 times bigger, but move 10 times quicker. And Demis is the guy who sold DeepMind to Google. He's the head of Google AI stuff now. A friend of mine for maybe 30 years. I say friend. You can't talk to Demis for love nor money now. Is more important than presidents. But the point being, I've had the joy of talking to him and listening to him for 30 years. He's been right by so many things. And he's right about this thing. This thing moves quicker than anything else. But as you said, Mike, it follows the same pattern. Like, it's the same principle that people forget about, you know, like having servers and having in-house servers was a conversation many moons ago. Yeah. Now it's going to be having in-house AI systems, having small language models. That's the conversation we all need to have. But a lot of us aren't geeks and techie enough. But if you're old enough, you remember intranets and server spaces and the conversation you had about, but you most probably weren't in the techie conversation where everyone's like, oh, what operating system should we use to run this server? Because, you know, you weren't as geeky as I was, really.
One of the things that I noticed that you talked about, you said it's about we're going to get uncomfortable. And for many people, this is going to be uncomfortable. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because if we're thinking about this from a communications perspective, particularly communications people are looking at all of their different audiences, be that internal or external. And if everyone's going to be feeling a moment or moments or a long period of discomfort, what does that look? Can you give us a little bit more about that?
Well, this is the reason why, and this is what me and Mike and other folk have been talking about for a long time, and yourself as well, Janet. You know, this is the opportunity for internal comms, right? This mass period of not only rapid growth and complex change, but uncertainty creates a byproduct of human emotion. Yeah. You know, as I talk about in my keynotes, and always people are very surprised, the psychology is more important than the technology. Like this is not a moment where we're saying, is it complicated to use AI? It was complicated to use other stuff because you need to know about coding, etc. It's not AI is not complicated. So actually, what's the barrier for adoption? And it's all psychological, and it's to do with fear, but it's also to do with lack of training. I don't know if you've seen that one of the big, I won't say the name of the company, one of the big 4 consultancy companies are now saying they're going to fire anyone or let go of anyone who refuses to be. Yeah, there you go. Refuses to be trained in AI. Right now, I saw that. I think it's very, very funny because they have a quality of intellect inside the business, which means that nobody, I don't think anyone that works for that company would not be able to be trained in AI. But will the leadership pay for that level of training throughout the whole company? And that becomes a conversation. So actually, This is more to do with human beings than it is to do with technology. And that fear that we have is amplified because of the speed of the revolution. Because people aren't thinking of it as a revolution. If you realised this was revolutionary times, you would ramp up your need for communication tenfold. Because it's revolutionary times. Like if you're sitting there in a political moment where there's a revolution, the government has to speak to people as much as it possibly can. Or the new government that's coming in. I mean, whatever, this is why it doesn't, the metaphor breaks down, but the change is coming. This is not the change of, can everybody please learn how to use a computer?
Yeah.
Because that took a decade or two. Yeah, this is not the change of, oh, by the way, you can use your mobile phone a bit more, because that took 5 years. And that wasn't a comms moment. Now it's, what do we do as a business? How does this rapidly change our culture? And can we bring everybody on side and on board as quickly as possible? That is purely communication.
So is this a way of sort of saying, because I worked in tech for a while, and we would talk about early adopters, and then we would talk about those that kind of, they've seen the early adopters go for it and they jump on board, and then you've got those who are kind of like dragging the feet, But are we saying basically everyone needs to be an early adopter, and actually that's going to create challenges for the early adopters? That's fine because that's their mindset. They're kind of with it. They're going to run with it. But for those who want someone else to go first and kind of dip their toe in the water and test it and all that, they're actually going to be the people who are going to feel more discomfort. Is we kind of looking at it from a behavioural perspective? Because before we had, as you say, we had an extended period and these three very distinct groups. It feels like that's going to become a homogenous mess, and they're all going to go through it in a very different way, and that's going to make it tricky for communication people because they've got three different types of behaviour at the same time.
Well, but this is the thing. I think it gets even more complicated for communication people because actually, if you look at the data, and I'm sorry, I'm a massive data geek when I do these things, but data to me is key. Like without the data, it's a narrative in your own head, right? Like, I'm not saying the data always tells you the truth, but my goodness, at least it's a compass towards a better direction than your own. Oh, I've decided that actually people don't feel like this. Well, based on what? No, nothing. I'm never biased. Well, you're a human being. Be quiet. Like that's I would be a human being. Myself as well, right? So you've got to look at the data. If you look at the data, because it's an industrial revolution, the fifth industrial revolution, it's powered by AI, and the powering mechanism is adopted by every generation. Yeah. So there's no break. You can't just go, oh, it's because young people do this. No. Anyone who has a mobile phone or a laptop, an internet connection is doing this. The secret cyborg, as it's called, is about 66% of, I just did some research with a company, I'm still under an NDA, but I can give you the thing. About 66%, I think it's 56 to 66% of people are not telling their bosses they're using AI. That's everybody, by the way.
Yeah.
That's leaders as well, by the way. This is not just not bosses. This is HR professionals.
Everyone,
This is everybody.
So it's 60% are doing it and 40% are lying, basically.
Yeah, pretty much. When you actually look at the other stats, it's like they've just lied on the survey, right? Now, imagine that everybody's doing this thing, but they haven't been trained to do this thing. And it gets even stranger because actually this is the new stuff by ChatGPT. So it's only ChatGPT, doesn't mean Claude and the other ones. And again, massive believer in the fact that there are many LLMs and they're all different, better at different things. But let's just use ChatGPT like the Hoover. Let's just bring it all together like the vacuum, etc. If we said ChatGPT was the kind of bellmark for all this stuff, it's something like 73% of people are using that for work. Using that for personal life, not work life.
Mm-hmm.
So remember before we didn't have home computers, we had work computers. Yeah, we had work. It was always work first. This is not work first. This is people first.
Okay.
This is ground up. This is the exact opposite to what it's always been. This makes no sense. This is why there's such a fundamental dynamic problem because we are used to the opposite. This is why it's a revolution.
Okay.
We are fundamentally used to it. So we would go through, so leaders would be like, well, okay, we need to learn about this because when our people are using it, they're all using it. And they're using it at home. Now, whether someone should be sitting at home and talking with ChatGPT about their work conditions, no, that should be against your AI policy. Do you know that 54% of companies don't have an AI policy in place at the moment? Like, that's insane, right? I'm working with clients right now, and they brought in an AI policy, which literally says inside it, and I won't say the names of them, obviously, but along the lines of, you can't do this because we've trained you to not do that. And I'm like, did anyone actually train them? And they're like, well, not yet, but we're planning to. So the AI policy puts them into an HR and employee instant problem. So we've now got, and I don't mean this in a negative way, because it's happened, it's the revolution. It's happened externally. It's happened to us. It's not an internal process. So we now have employees who are massively skilled up on this stuff because they've done it themselves.
Yeah.
But they're also saying things like, when you use the AI bot to do the summarization of that meeting, I didn't get consent for that. And you didn't ask me for consent for that. So that means that's invalid, which it does, because it is invalid, because you never asked consent. Then you've got the problem is, but it was just taking notes. But based on what large language model? In what way? It's like saying, we've got this lawyer that I'm going to have next to me in the meeting. Cool. But you have to tell the person there's a lawyer there, right? This is what you have to do. If you don't, then it's not valid. People are using AI kind of semi-secretly, even in work, because it's come from home. They just do it. But they're not realizing this is an HR employee. Sorry to get so excited by it. But we're in this place where we're creating a mass amount of problems in a place which is already fractious, which has already got fear, which has already got people thinking they're going to be made redundant or fired because of AI. And then we've got employees who rightly say, my boss is using AI, maybe against me. And therefore, should I not be able to have my own AI to use against them? Do you see what I'm saying? Where we get this kind of weird world but we're already in it. It's not coming. It's already happening. So I think that the big thing from a leadership point of view is the fact that it's already happening en masse at home. I think that there's a lot of presumption that we'll need to train them up. You need to train them up to use the AI that you're allowing for a work purpose, not in how to use AI. And I found that breathtaking.
There's a lot to unpack in what you said. And there's kind of two themes that I want to touch on. One is that the issue of workplace tools being outpaced by public tools is not a new issue. This is the whole conversation we've been having about, particularly in the internal comms world, about platforms and getting the internal platforms to at least a comparable level of user friendliness and flexibility as the tools that people are used to using externally. And the level of resistance and complacency that we've seen in businesses about, whether this is necessary, whether it's advisable, whether it's compliant, et cetera. Really what we're talking about is that's going from 3 on the Richter scale to 8 in a matter of days, basically, is what we're dealing with. And it's going higher and higher. And corporate culture, rather than embracing and getting up to speed, is kind of dragging down, and even in a state of institutional denial about this. I was talking to somebody in financial services the other day, and it's like, we're not allowed to use AI. And it's like, no, it's somebody in public sector, and say, well, we're just starting to roll out Copilot. It's like, and you're in public sector and you're dealing with stakeholders who are far more advanced than you.
Yeah, and Copilot's not particularly good. I mean, that's the other danger. Sorry,
I didn't want to go there, but
no. But the thing is, it was amazing because I'm agnostic when it comes to tools. I don't care, because I talk about the future of work and technology. I don't care what the business is behind it that does the thing. I have no vested interest in it. People think that sometimes I'm kind of paid by Claude because I think it's the best. It's because it's the best. But that's because it's the best for the things that I do.
That would be right now.
Yeah, right now, absolutely.
That will evolve. That could change. That could,
totally with you. And Mistral's blood. I mean, if you think about it, if you really, really think about it, that all these large language, I talk about this in my keynotes, but the thing that I love the most is there was a leaked memo a couple of years ago, and people don't pay enough attention to it. But why would they? They're not as geeky as me. But it comes from Google, and basically Google's guy said, he just brought out a book. I was just on the radio before him today, but just brought a book. He's absolutely right. He basically said, it's not going to be Google, it's not going to be OpenAI, because while we've been squabbling, a third faction's eating our lunch.
Someone else,
and it's because the third faction is an open source, small language model. Now, we had this conversation about Microsoft and Linux years ago, right?
Yeah.
It was the same thing. And we know the back end, if you work in tech, the back end is not done by Microsoft. They don't bloody trust, because it's freaking useless. Same with Copilot, right? It's not good. But even your back end system, if you have a large enough business, and I would say that pretty much, and I've got to be careful with words here, but anything over 100 people will be large enough. You do not want to have Microsoft and those other people running your AI systems. You do not want it to be down to OpenAI, because OpenAI at any point can make it stupid. And this is what people are missing, is that if you become, if you become hooked on the drug that they are pushing, and I hate to say it, but they call you users for a reason. And if you look at what social media does, it's doing the same thing. And people miss this, right? Do you know the and apologies, because I promised I wouldn't go on a bit of a rant, but this is a doozy. If you look at the social media scroll, the infinite scroll, it was designed to be the race to the bottom of the brainstem, right?
Yeah.
Literally designed to do it, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, like consciously designed to do the same. People are missing at the moment that they are building AI systems to consciously do the same thing to you, to consciously do it. Right?
Yeah, to kind of,
to make you feel amazing, to be sycophantic. And people are, well, why is ChatGPT so sycophantic and so lovely? It's designed to keep you on it. Why does ChatGPT always then ask me a question and think that I'm amazing and keep saying that I'm brilliant? Because it's designed to keep you on it. Because it's pumping data out of you. 97% of people do not pay for ChatGPT access. 97% of people are the product that they are farming. This is what people don't get.
So we're looking back to that Stanford professor.
Yeah.
We're back there saying, okay, if you do this, then you can keep people in, dopamine hits, etc., etc.
Feedback loops.
So this is just kind of taking it one step further.
But it's taking it one step further. But it's even darker, because it's taking it one step further and then adding another dimension, right? So data feedback loops, because you get the data mining, then you can change it based on that. I don't know if you've just seen what Sam Altman's saying about how they're going to change the new version of OpenAI. And that have you not seen it today? They brought out OpenAI, brought out Pulse. Pulse is the curated system for your own news feed. Like, this is what Pulse is. I'm that much of a geek. It only came out this morning.
Okay.
And Pulse, I think about Feedly, because technically, by the way, this is so easy to do, by the way. Everyone could have done this. But all they're doing is they're looking at, remember, we're looking at 2.5 billion messages a day. Okay. The data is insane. Like, they released that report saying this is how people use ChatGPT. And they released it to everybody, which I think is fascinating. Good on them as a business strategy. Yeah. I wouldn't have done it. I'd have just kept it and gone, whoa, because I'm mean. But if you think about how people are using it, they know what to build next, right?
Yeah.
And they're using AI to build it, and it only takes them, Siren's eye just moves across. It takes them not even a nanosecond. It might take them 3 days to build it, but they can build it. There's thousands of people working at it. I could vibe code together Pulse most probably in a weekend if I really wanted to with some automations. And I don't know, I'm not a coder, and I can do it. So they can do it. Now, the point is, when you look at what they can do, and this is why it's so dangerous, they can move into any job role, into anything, really, really quickly if they wanted to. But there's a reason why they don't, and that is because they can data mine so much more value out of giving it to everybody else for free and data mining it from a consumer level. But all it takes them to do is slightly move their gaze.
Yeah.
Just go, wait a minute. Oh, we should most probably be a recruiter. Because all the people that are moaning about their jobs, we know that data. What about if wait a minute, aren't we? Microsoft, don't they own LinkedIn? Oh, they do, don't they? What about if we seed into the conversation before people realize they're uncomfortable in their job, that there might be an opportunity for them to work somewhere else? And then we're into this next level, which people don't agree with. It's a second and third consequence of having the convenience technology. It's exactly why I argued against people having Alexas. Like, if you honestly own an Alexa, have a chat with yourself. Like, if the government came to you and said, we're going to give you a free box which listens to you all the time, everyone would say this is a dystopian future. And yet people spend, was it 99 quid to have an Alexa listen to you all the time? Like, it's mental, right? Now, think about that from a work point of view. And this is where I really want us all to go with this. And bear with me, because I know I'm a tech futurist. This might not happen for a while, but I think it's happening right now. The amount of data they have about disgruntled employees is stunning. And it's from a very personal level, because it came from personal, not work. This is a personal system that they use and tell the truth to. One of the reasons why Twitter was so amazing to start off with is because people tweeted what they actually thought and believed. Now, that data amass was astounding. That's why I used to believe in social media, because I thought democratization, it gives everyone a voice, is a great thing. But you look at it from a data point of view, the reason why Elon Musk bought it is because of the insane amount of data that he came with it. That's why it's worth 44 billion, because it can power his AI machine. Then that's the reason why he got rid of everyone who was, left wing, because he doesn't want his AI machine to become left wing, right? He doesn't want it to have these sensibilities. Think of it, though, in a different way for your own organization. right now, all those conversations are happening outside your company, right?
Yeah.
And they're happening inside a machine that listens to them and takes the data on, but also persuades them of their next move.
So this is kind of taking that the conversations are happening on WhatsApp.
Yes.
Up to a whole new level.
Yes, it's not WhatsApp.
Yeah, it's kind of like the first thing was they're happening in the corridor, then it's they're happening at the pub, now then it's they're happening on WhatsApp, and now they're happening with AI, and there is someone somewhere who sits and owns that data and knows that data.
But it's even worse because, right, remember we talked about years ago, we talked about dark social, right? It's the dark social, which it was because we couldn't monitor it. But isn't that even weirder that we call it the stuff we can't monitor is dark? That's actually freedom. It's called freedom of individuality. Anyway, sorry, I apologize for
Come back.
I will, sorry. Just the fact that, well, no, but really think about the fact we call it dark social. I mean, come on. It's messaging between friends. I mean, it's fun. But I think in a work thing, we would want to listen to all that. That's why Yammer and other things existed, right? And Slack technically would exist.
Yeah.
But you think about all those conversations which are not Slack things, and then you think they're on WhatsApp. But this is worse. And it's worse, but I'd also say better. But I've got to be careful with words.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it's worse because the thing you're talking to then speaks to you back. Yeah. You're not talking to a human being.
Yeah.
You're talking to a semi-sentient
You're talking to a large language model, which basically is primed to make you feel happy and will happily hallucinate and give you incorrect information because it feels that that's what's could possibly keep you.
Well, not even feels. It knows, because it knows human beings, because there's 2 billion data points that says the best way to deal with this is to say, yes, you're right. You've always been great. You know what you should do is you should be more you. You're awesome. Now, the thing with that, WhatsApp messages between friends is fine. That's the internal comms moment about that's the dark social, right? But if you think about the other way of looking at it, you've completely out the loop now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you've allowed, because we've allowed the technology, because it could be free, because we don't know that we are the product when we're not buying a product, because we don't get that data is the new oil, because we don't understand where we are as human beings in this massive race of the, race to the bottom of the brainstem. We don't get this is a fifth industrial revolution. We don't get that they make trillions of dollars of this very moment, of this very thing. They don't care whether they destabilize your company. But if they wanted to care and had an agenda, which is part of an algorithm that you can't control, they would do so. Yeah. So your whole thing is not ban AI, but buy your own AI and install your own AI. So then you can control the AI. The AI is the most important thing, right? Most big companies should have their own AI system, just like most big companies have their own intranet. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. One question.
You can say no, by the way.
No. I do, but I read, and I can't remember where I read this. It was possibly in the FT 1 weekend, 2 weekends, 3 weekends ago. And it talked about how a lot of the big consulting companies jumped on board immediately, figured stuff out, started to create their own AI. And it was talking about agentic AIs and things that I'm still kind of catching up on, like, okay, what is this? What is that? And it said a lot of the stuff that's actually been developed, yes, it will do a certain amount of stuff. Wow, that's amazing. It will spit out the 5-page report instead of a 150-page report. And it will be, all of that kind of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But as things are still moving so quickly, that's stuck. And then there's going to need to be several more million, possibly a billion, put into that. And can all of these companies afford to be able to do things like that? Can they afford to take what they've got and just scrap it and say, you know what, that was great for 2 years. We now need to move on to the next big thing. And knowing how financial statements work and knowing amortization, I can never say that word. Oh no, it's not going to happen. Thank you. That word. Can't say that word. That on a lot of, particularly around tech, they were looking at 5 to 10 years. And suddenly you're saying, actually, that's going to be 1 to 2 years. And then your money and your investment is gone. Where does that kind of land you? And also, where does that land? Like, L&D departments haven't even got there with training people, and we're already onto the next big thing. So at what point do people start to go, I'm shutting down because I just time out, I can't, this is too much?
Well, this is the thing about why psychology is more important than technology, right? This is the reason why comms is so important. This is the reason why all those that communicate 10 times more than you think you should be comfortable with is the irony of our situation we're in now, for that very reason. Because of, and everyone's going to say, well, we've already got fatigue and message fatigue and all the rest of it. But there isn't, by the way. There's no such thing as message fatigue. I know people tell me off for this, because safe psychological support can never be underestimated. Yeah. And in creating a safe psychological environment, I don't think we're anywhere near it for where we need to be for this industrial revolution, because the speed it's happening, the uncertainty that it creates, the anxiety it creates is so much bigger than people are realizing. We thought COVID was a moment for us to really deal with. And by the way, I don't think we've massively dealt with the trauma of COVID times yet, by the way, which is why it's coming back to haunt us now, because it takes 3 times as long to get over the moment than the moment actually existed. But that's psychology. The thing from a technology point of view is the more that we kind of try to foist it upon people en masse, the bigger problem we have. Most people, I did some work with Custodio this month, it's something like 36% of people believe they have been trained sufficiently in AI for their role. Okay? Which means it's 64%.
That's their role today.
Today, yeah. Role today. That's right now. Yeah? Not the role that's going to happen in 3 months or 6 months. Yeah. Not even to start conceptualizing what their role will be and how it changes.
Yeah.
Again, that's, another thing. But we're not even getting them to the bit where they're happy now. And 64% of people are unhappy. This correlates massively with how many people want to leave their job. Yeah, because lots of people want to leave their job.
Sounds like another reason that an engagement survey or a happiness survey is just not really something that communication teams should be measured. Yet another reason we should not be measured on those kinds of metrics, because actually in the world of AI, we already know that people are unhappy with the way that their worlds are changing, and it's only going to increase. It's not going to stop. It's not going to change. And yet we're being asked with very little to go up against this. And that's tricky. The company culture change, to say this is the 5th industrial revolution, the company culture change that has to happen is an external force that make it happen, right? We need to have different intelligences: emotional intelligence, independent intelligence, organization intelligence. That organization intelligence is the one that people don't like to talk about, because people don't like to admit we don't need this many people in the company. Now, nobody likes that, because everyone goes, oh, well, yeah, but everyone will be unhappy. But you want to keep your happy staff, and you want the other people. You've got to remember, engagement surveys, you folk know this much more than I do. Employee engagement levels are some of the lowest we've ever seen, right? Yeah.
Happiness levels, some of the lowest we've ever seen. Productivity is some of the lowest we've ever seen. Like this is not, we're not talking about good times and then something bad happens. We're talking about bad times and then something good happens. And that good thing is AI. But that good thing doesn't mean that everyone has the same job. It doesn't. And I hate to say that, because everyone gets very cross at me. It's not because it's not because I want people to be made redundant. It's the fact we won't need them as much. So you can't, as a business, you can't do it. Now, much bigger conversation to that is, what do we do as society? I'm not touching that with the barge pole, because what we're talking about is what happens in the future of work, which kind of implies you are employed. Okay?
Would you just, because I'm thinking about how we're talking about this, and I realise I'm asking a lot of questions, and Mike, I promise I will let you jump in at some point. But one of the things
I'm enjoying the ride here, so I'm fine with the flow as it is at the moment. I do have a few questions, but keep letting it rip for the time being.
So one of my questions, I was listening to a radio show earlier this week, and somebody who is a storyteller was talking about how when you get to a point of chaos or things all start to get a little bit tricky and a little bit, actually what then tends to happen is either you're closer to creativity, but you're also closer to renewal. And so there is this period, exactly the same way that, a caterpillar starts to go, uh-oh, and then suddenly, da-da, butterfly.
Yeah.
So you've got this moment on this sense of renewal. And it was the word renewal that I found really interesting. And I wonder, we talk about, I've written down, is this renewal not conflict? That was one of the things that I wrote. And we're talking about industrial revolution, and we're talking about words that sound very conflict driven. And if we look back at some of those revolutions, French Revolution, conflict. If we're looking at the Industrial Revolution, I'm from the northwest of England. We were at the heart of an industrial revolution, and there was a lot of conflict. And I'm wondering, is there a way to reframe this as renewal? And what would that look like? And how does that then impact your organization, your employees? Because actually what you're doing is you're taking a company and you're renewing it for the next phase, which we could argue a lot of companies have been doing that for the last 2-3 years anyway, since 2023.
But they haven't had the power of the driving force, which is what AI is, right? Like digital transformation was conceptually hard to do, but now with AI, it's actually very easy to do.
Yeah.
But the easy thing is not easy, because the easy bit is the technology. Psychology is more important than technology. The hard thing is getting everyone else on board and reframing the conversation so it becomes more palatable. Now, I'm not emotionally intelligent. I talk about emotional intelligence in my book because of the power of emotional intelligence. Those, what we used to call the soft skills, will become the power skills. The reason why I work in not only because people have asked me to do so, and I've done it for over half a decade or so, but internal comms, the reason why is because I passionately believe there's no better time to be in internal comms. This is literally the time to shine, because there's no bigger time that you need to have amazing communication, which is nuanced enough that doesn't create a book called The Fifth Industrial Revolution, because that's stupid. Now, I'm stupid, so I wrote a book called The Fifth Industrial Revolution. Now, if I was clever like you and brilliant and, and I had more emotional intelligence, I wouldn't have called it The Fifth Industrial Revolution. But of course, as I'm bloke and I'm mechanical and I'm techie, I looked at it and went, wait a minute, it's a bit like the Fourth Industrial Revolution, this, but it's quicker. I'm going to call it the Fifth, because that's how stupid I am. Fourth, fifth, ta-da! We're in the fifth, because it just lands on.
No, now, I like your characterization of it, though, because it is an industrial revolution. You're basically bringing new tools into the economy and into the workplace that are fundamentally going to change the nature of work, as well as just simply productivity and the range of products that are available. So I get that. The thing that I'm seeing, both from an internal comm standpoint and from my own lens from being trained as a political consultant, is that I think the thing that's really scary for people is that unpredictability used to be somewhat predictable. There would either be one party or another. There would either be one flavor of another. Or another. Now there's an unpredictability to the unpredictability. We're seeing that in the political sphere. We're seeing that in the, in the technological sphere, and we're seeing that in the economic sphere all at the same time.
Yeah.
And when you come back to internal communication, part of the role of internal communication, what employees want from internal communication, ultimately is clarity and reassurance. And we can't give that to anybody right now.
Okay, I'm gonna
at best, we can reassure them about what's not changing from day to day.
But that's my point. That's why it's even more nuanced what you guys have got to do, what you folk have got to do, right? Because you've got to separate what is possible, what's not possible. Right. And you've got to give, as you brilliantly said, about reassurance. One of the things that I truly believe, and I get a bit geeky about it, is, internal comms or communications full stop. It's got to become the conscience in the room when AI is being rolled out, because AI is going to be rolled out to all these. You've got a big enough job, right? You've got a big enough job just in communicating the message in a nice enough, better, nuanced way that human beings with psychology feel safe and are treasured and are heard as the AI rolls through it, which will be in the next year. If you start thinking about the geopolitical situation and diversion, hypernormalization and all these other things, which I can happily talk about massively, maybe over a beer or two, but it gets very geeky. If you just purely think about future work, the comms, the amount of comms you'd have to have just to get people through this bit is huge. It's just huge. It's like most probably 10 times more than you used to. And the irony is that AI is the problem, but also the solution. Like, this is not possible for a tiny team of people to do unless they use AI. This is not possible unless you use data. This is not possible unless you use hyper-personalization on a scale that your brain cannot comprehend, right? This is, by the way, how, and again, this is a very geeky moment, but you look at how politics has changed. Politicians have realized this. It's the reason why you don't see en masse messages anymore. You see a few, but actually the work underneath it is Facebook. It's, advertise, it's Cambridge Analytica. It's all that stuff that's already happened. It's how do you persuade a nation by not putting it on the side of a bus, but only putting it on the side of a bus when you know that the people are ready for the side of the bus. And that's all data. That is data beyond our comprehension, data analytics beyond our comprehension. But if we look at it instead, not as a nation, but as a company, that data is a manageable amount as long as you know that data is true. And so it comes back to that, is the data clean? Is the data right? Have you enriched the data? How have you used the data? Can you use AI to become that data analyst? And then because of it, can you scale a high personalized message to create the outcome you want? Now that's really geeky. And a lot of internal comms people don't want to hear that because it's too much for them. And by the way, it's too much for me. And I work in AI and I still go, what happened?
It's a lot.
But it isn't for AI. So the interns that you're going to use are already they're data analysts, they're scientists, they're already all these things already. The bigger danger is this is easy stuff for Microsoft. This is easy stuff for tech companies. It's what they do. Yeah, you might go, oh my God, how the heck would I do this? Well, you're going to have to train yourself up pretty quick because Microsoft will do it in 2 years. And again, you've got to be able to persuade your boss. And by the way, this is not talking about self-interest and about, the resistance comes from self-interest and misinformation. But by the way, the resistance part of this is even bigger if you're talking about from an internal comms point of view. You've got to realize that there's going to be such mass resistance to all this stuff, but it doesn't make a difference. And I know it sounds awful, but in a revolution, it doesn't make a difference what people think about it. It doesn't, and it's not fair. And I'm not saying it is fair, but it's happening. And it's already happened, by the way. The technical trigger has already happened. The mass things already happened. Redundancies are already happening. Everything will be happening. The question is does this business, as you rightly said, Janet, about, this is literally a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, right? But how does the butterfly look? And are you part of the butterfly when it comes out the chrysalis? It's nothing to do with me. It's not the fact that I like that process, but this is the process that's going to happen. And it's going to happen to every business. Every business will go through this, and some will win and some will go. That is what happens with capitalism. The deeper thing you've got to think about is, how do you know right now that the data you've got, a lot of people don't even want to have the data conversation, but it can't be a one-to-many broadcast situation anymore because everything's too nuanced. So it's not, how do I make my CEO sound better? It's, how do I create the message from my CEO or other people and do it so every human being with their 16 personalities and their, insights or whatever all these things are, whatever you want to use, how do we know it's, and the other thing is, how do we know it's a cultured message with nuance for them at that time when they receive it in the bit where they're feeling the way they are? And that's impossible to do on scale unless you use a computer. Does that make sense? Why data is so important? I know
it makes it makes perfect sense, and it highlights potentially an even bigger problem, which is hyper personalization at a certain level is easy. The issue is, how do you avoid the over hyper personalization, such as it becomes impossible to integrate activity and create any kind of commonality within a group of people, a community, an organization? I mean, what we're seeing in the U.S. is kind of, and not just in the U.S., kind of globally from a political standpoint, is a complete atomization with some degree of polarization around certain issues.
Yeah. But isn't that, I mean, again, we've got to be careful because I think it's different for nations who have an agenda compared to a company which is looking, because I do question whether certain political parties want they want the polarization, right?
Yes.
I'm not going to go into this too much.
Means.
Yeah, exactly. It's hyper normalization. It's a strategy so you can get a dictatorship. It's not a basic, but it is what happens. Apologies, bit of a rant. Don't want to talk about the politics of it because I think we make it too, it's not politics. It's actually business. How do you keep all these people together happy is surely what you want. A nation actually doesn't want that because politicians want to stay in power. Right. But if you look at what a business wants to make more money, and the way to make more money, I think
that's an extremely interesting point that you make. And that nations function basically on a governing plurality, whether it's 50% or 30%, a critical mass of people that can overrule everybody else. We've seen that in the US.
In democracies, but you could argue you don't have democracies. You could argue that the two-party system isn't a democracy by itself, and with monopolized capitalism, you could argue the correct thing. The thing is, though, that actually skews everything, and so it's not valuable for a future of work conversation, even though it's intellectually interesting. Because actually,
I think it's valuable from a future of work it's valuable from a future work conversation, because as politics becomes more polarized and less democratic, businesses are effectively going to have to become less polarized and more democratic in order to get enough alignment around what they're trying to do. I mean, you go into an organization, everybody is making tens, hundreds of decisions every day. The CEO and the information system can only make so many decisions or guide you towards so many decisions. If it can make the decisions automatically, they don't need you to be there, frankly. So, and what I'm saying is that if anything, this is going to create pressure for organizations to be more responsive to their employees and their other stakeholders, because otherwise they're going to move into irrelevance fairly quickly.
Yeah, all right, I hear you. I mean, and this is one of the greatest battles,
I mean, that's my sense. Am I completely off base here? I mean, no organization can function at the level of polarization that you have in a political system.
No, exactly, because it wouldn't work. But also, you don't have any choice, do you? The whole point about that system is you don't have any choice. But employees have a choice where they work.
Yes.
And so
they have a choice of
what
to do when they work, too. They have a lot more choice of what to do when they work than
how much they
bosses have ever been willing to acknowledge.
Yeah, absolutely right. But and again, I've got to be careful with words because it feels like it's political. The workers actually have more power than perhaps we sometimes believe they do in a capitalistic system. And the amount they work makes a difference to how well you do, right? Which is why you're nice to people, and the reason why niceness actually works sometimes. So the stick and carrot and all the rest of it. But you look at productivity going down all the time, which it has done for quite a while. But again, you could argue there's a variety of different reasons for it. And this is why we need the revolution. And then you look at the employee kind of social construct that we have, right? Like how many business, I've got to be careful words again, but it's something like you have 7 jobs now. I think it's now more than 7 jobs in your lifetime.
Yeah.
But my dad would have thought you had 2. And if you had 3, you're a loser, right? And his granddad would have said 1. And his great granddad might have been most probably was a slave, but that's a different conversation. But he only had 1 job. But the point is, we get more and more rights as time goes on. We get more and more progression. And there is an argument that we're swinging the other way back. But there might be more and more power as the individual. And therefore, as you said, Mike, and rightly say, that the business's job is to bring everyone together more and more than it ever has been. And hyper-personalization, and this is why I think you're absolutely right in what you were saying, hyper-personalization actually has a danger that it doesn't do that. But that's what the human being needs to do, because AI will do stuff at scale, but without the consciousness and without the understanding. But what you need is a human being to say, whoa, what we needed actually was a bit more nuance to this. We need to bring everyone together. You're not just playing music, you're playing good music. You know what I mean? There has to be taste and there has to be an agenda, which is a human agenda. Because you let the AI do it, the AI will just serve the individual, not the company.
You mentioned music, and music is a particularly good example of this. You have Spotify generating customized AI music for individuals that people are going to love, and no one else is going to ever have heard of.
Yeah, but again, we've got to be careful, because that is not that's the company that's sponsored. This is a brilliant example. That is a business, a technological sized business. We've got to remember it's not a music business. It's a tech company.
It's a tech company.
It's a tech company. It's like saying Facebook is a social business. No, it's not. It's a tech company. It sells advertising. Spotify sells music, but also sells advertising. It's a tech company that uses data to then personify in a moment, so then you stay in it for longer for advertising and to sell it. It's a subscription-based model. It's not complicated. If Netflix decides that they're going to use AI to create the perfect movie for you every day, that's got nothing to do with the future of work. But that's a very good business model. It's a brilliant idea, except it means if you create cinema, you create films, you are screwed, because everyone can create their own movie. But we're not, but right now, we're not in that place for work, but we are in a place where you have a potential in this next generation with the 5th industrial revolution that independent intelligence is going to be key. You actually want to empower your employees much more than you used to. In the 4th industrial revolution, you didn't want to, and 3rd, you definitely didn't want to empower your, it's all manufacturing. Stay in the factory and do the thing, right? You wanted robots that were stupid. Now you want really clever individuals that you give superpowers to with maximum flexibility, so they get productivity, which is 10 times more than they had before. And then the deeper question for us all is, as leaders, what do we do when everybody has a superpower? Because if you've got 20 people with superpowers rather than 200 people you had before, you have to lead completely differently. You have to, because you have to respect everybody and treat them almost like a separate business. Like you have to know each player because they are so powerful in this contract that your position is almost untenable without them. And this is why it's such a mind-blowing thing, hence the fifth industrial revolution. And we're in this bit right now where I predict, and it might be because of my own sensibilities, but it's also because of it's just it's logical progression. If you give people amazing abilities, they become more powerful in the social construct. Does this mean that everybody becomes more powerful as an employee? Well, no, not everyone will. It's not fair. But some people, like I know right now, and I don't mean this in a negative way, there are coders who I know who are 5 times more productive because they have 3 AI agents that work for them. But by the way, I know coders who were 5 times more powerful because they had 10 people in India working for them and they paid them 20 grand a year. It was just a different way of thinking. If you're getting paid 100 grand a year and you can outsource half your job, why the hell wouldn't you? Because the person who gives you OT. But now you outsource it to AI that's most probably in your phone. And it's that democratization of ability, because it's not financially constrained, which changes everything. Does that kind of make sense why it's so exciting, but also why it's so worrying from a comms point of view? Because the way you talk to somebody who is amazingly powerful and flexible and can leave at any moment has to be different to, oh, by the way, if you don't do this, then you're going to be fired. Because they don't care about being fired because they're going to leave, right? This is the thing. And this is really dangerous for a lot of leaders because they have to move. And by the way, I'm not saying I'm right with this, but I think they have to start moving from this kind of get everyone back in the office and let's make sure that I'm the boss still, which is very fashionable at the moment. But they'll start losing people. And you see, look at the data. Return to office mandates, have they worked? Look at the data.
No, the data speaks.
The data speaks volumes, right? Has any of this worked? Has productivity gained because of these things? No. Right. What's happened? Mass amounts of people have started leaving and doing different stuff. When all these people start starting their own businesses and become your competition, what happens? This is the thing. What people are missing is that the intellectual drain will not disappear. The clever people will just do something new, which is most probably in your same domain. It's most because they're clever in your domain, right? And so that you're just creating your competition. But you won't know it for a year and a half until they come back and they get you. And then you go, oh, I blame our company culture. But it was your fault to start off with because you created the company culture. And one of the reasons why you created it is because you didn't spend enough money in internal comms, because you didn't, because you considered it to be not that important. Now, I might be wrong, and I'm kind of hoping I am, because that amount of revolutionary change is why I call it a revolution. I think it will be, it will be bloody, it will be quick, and it will be interesting to see. And I don't think governments have got the answer, but I'm now going to write a new book, which is all about renewal. And this is the 5th renewal, which sounds
copyright right here.
Absolutely. We'll write it together. You're much cleverer than I am. In fact, I tell you what, you write it. You write the book on it, because it's much going to come. I can only give you the tech side of it. I mean, literally, my job right now is to help people learn to use AI, so then they are not part of the cull that comes, because it's not, it's somebody who'll take your job is someone using AI. It's not AI right now.
Yeah.
In 5 years' time, it will be AI. But right now, we've got a few years. Learn how to use AI as quickly as you possibly can. Learn how to use it well. Come to the table with that knowledge, because other people, including very, very pronounced techie people in your business, don't know it yet. But if you don't turn up with it, in a year's time, everybody's going to know. Yeah. And then you don't have a job, because the tech team will take your job, or the HR person will take your job, or, there are so many jobs out there at the moment that could be folded into a different job and a different role. And I know that doesn't sound positive. And I know that internal comms people get at me when I kind of say this. It'd be fascinating to see, actually, Mike, just to see me and you, because you did that great thing in Brussels with the unconference. I wish I'd been there. I'd love to know, was AI a big part of the conversation there?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Huge.
Okay, good.
There were like
Finally.
4 or 5 of the 15 sessions. I think 4 or 5 were either about AI or had AI as a major centerpiece.
Okay, good.
I
there's a lot of
facilitated a conversation on AI. So it was really interesting conversations. It was fascinating. And I think what you said there, Dan, about people who use, it's not that AI is going to take your job, it's that somebody else who knows how to use it will take your job. And we've been saying that for probably about 6 to 9 months. And it's really interesting that there are still people who aren't catching on to that.
Honestly, I've been saying it for 3 years. And this is my point. I was talking about this when I did the keynote. Maybe it was more than 3 years now with the IOIC and other folk. And it's not because I'm a technologist that I'm kind of excited by this. It's not the hype curve kind of moment. It's not because I want it to happen. It's just the fact that it's like not using a computer 10 years ago. Like it's not an option, right? But it was.
Yeah.
But this was 4 years ago. Like 4 years ago, I was saying, look, everyone, you should really learn this stuff. And they're like, okay, cool, we'll come back to it. 3 years later, people, 5 out of 15 workshops are talking about AI. As a sector, most of your stuff should be like, if you don't know how to use different LLMs, if you haven't downloaded a small language model into a computer yet, if you haven't become technological, I know it sounds awful. It's not that somebody else using AI will take your job. It's somebody in your business using AI will amalgamate your role.
Mm.
Like, it's not another internal comms person who uses AI. I mean, don't get me wrong. They most probably will just say, we don't need an internal comms person anymore. And so you could argue less internal comms people will be, you'll move jobs, but they won't then fulfill the role, etc. And it gets rather silly and complicated. But it's not the other people in the world that are internal comms people coming for you that are clever and better than you are. It could be in the first next 6 months, but it will literally be somebody else who uses internal, and they go, wait a minute, this is what our internal comms person does. And then the boss goes, oh, yeah, I suppose it is. I mean, it's not as good, but it's pretty okay. And this is the point where you, Mike, and other people have rightly said about being more strategic. And, if you're not on that table while that conversation happens, which most people aren't, like, how many internal comms people are leading the AI conversation in their business?
Yeah, I've been asking about that for years. I mean, the fact that internal comms has not taken the initiative to at least create a compelling narrative around AI has driven a lot of the concern about us becoming irrelevant, because we didn't do what we were there to do, and we were expected to be told what to do. It seems that kind of the overarching themes of what you're saying here is one, get yourself fluent in at least how AI works, if not, from an application standpoint, rather than necessarily become fluent in every conceivable tool.
Well,
because the tools will change, but the fluency will still be there. Second, be proactive. Scan the horizon, see what's going on, and see where the next opportunity to get ahead of some pack, so that you can at least claim credit for having done something. And the third thing is to be agile. To be able, when one LLM or one service stops, doing what you need it to do, find the next service that does. I mean, I'm having this issue with AI graphics at the moment. I use Ideogram a lot. Ideogram was much better than Midjourney, but I'm kind of at the limit of what Ideogram can do. It's basically doing the same thing over and over again.
Midjourney is so much better. And then your point, I think your first point and your third point are absolutely right. But I think if you simplified everything into one thing, it would be just take action now and learn AI basics now, right? Because the AI basics, it doesn't make a difference if you're using Claude, Gemini, all these other things, because actually it's like choosing the engine in a car. What we're talking about is, can you drive the car?
Yeah.
Right. Now, the engine in a Ferrari is much better, but if you can't effing drive a car, it doesn't make any difference if you've got a Ford Fiesta or a Ferrari. Also, by the way, Ferraris can't go over speed bumps. It's horses for courses. Like, it's the basic things. By the way, I'm not a great believer in cars and I'm not a massive fan of driving, but we get where we are with it, right? Most people right now are not in the position. They're looking at these cars and they're going, oh, these horses, and going, oh, wouldn't it be great if I learned how to ride a horse? You're not in the position to do that. You've got to learn how to ride a horse first and then start talking about thoroughbreds. But don't get bloody confused by different types of horses. Don't worry about that. Just learn how to ride a horse. Ride a horse first. Then think about, oh, does it good going over the jumps? Don't even think about doing jumps yet, right? Like, if you are not comfortable right now with the idea of having a discussion around data and knowing your business outcomes, that's what you have to sort first.
Yeah.
And most, even marketing people, but definitely internal comms people, aren't up for that bit, because it's about hard metrics. and marketing. And because that's, I mean, again, I get told off all the time. Internal comms isn't marketing. I keep getting told off because I come from a marketing background. I make it too easy, make it too obvious, should I say. But the metrics for success must exist, right? Otherwise the job doesn't. Now, you could argue about metrics for success, and Mike, I know you do a brilliant job on it. I've read your stuff and I think you're both right and stuff. But at some point we have to go, the return on investment for me being employed is this.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Nail that. Whatever that is, whatever you decide to nail it on, because it's individual for every business is different. Make sure you've got the thing that you can win on. Then go, right, how does AI help me do that? And which AI will help me the most?
Yeah.
Okay. Because all that is, can I ride the horse? Where do we need to go? And then choose what type of horse it's going to be. Because it's really a moot point. Like, it's moot. Like, unless you're riding a donkey, which, by the way, is what Copilot is. Ha ha! There's my joke at the end. There you go. I shouldn't. Sorry, that's me, because I mean 98% of you have to use Copilot. But if it is a donkey, if it is Copilot, and by the way, Copilot's about to get much better. So that's why I'm telling you that, because the inside.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
the donkey's going to get upgraded to a mule, I guess.
No, the donkey's about to get upgraded to a thoroughbred. But Microsoft's been playing a long game on this. It's quite funny what's about to happen. But again, you can see that in how LinkedIn's changed and some other permutations. The sleeping giant will awake. And I don't get me wrong, I'm not bashing Microsoft. It's just the fact that it isn't very good. It's not very good. But the thing is, even if it isn't very good, you still need to know how to ride it, right?
Yeah.
So do you know how to make the very best out of your donkey right now while it's still a mule, right? And the answer is, for most people, they don't know. So learn Copilot. And I hate to say that because it turns my stomach a bit because I know how bad it is compared to Claude. But learn Copilot. Learn how to prompt Copilot better. First thing you need to do.
But also, as you say right now, it's not as if people only have access to their workplace tools where they would have Copilot. You can get a free version of Claude. You can get still a free version of ChatGPT, which, okay, it's not going to do all the super duper stuff. But if you're learning, you've got enough. You've got a simple version that will allow you to do some really simple things.
Just be really, just be really, really sorry. Just be really,
you
really
have to be careful about what you're using it for, because you do have to make sure that your data is
AI policy. Even if the AI policy isn't written in your company, it will be. I think we'll get into a bit next year where they retroactively say, yeah, but it's business sense that you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
like it's in your employee contract. That's basic common sense. You knew you shouldn't have done that, therefore, but you did it, therefore you're in trouble. And we're all in a precarious position. So pay, because it's literally the cost of a slightly posh gym membership every month.
Yeah.
Pay for your AI, just like you should pay for your intern, just like you'd pay employees. And if it has to come out of your budget, your own personal budget, just live with that for right now. Yeah, and then persuade your boss that actually it wouldn't be great if the leadership really understood that AI was important, not only that you should have been trained slightly better, but also you had the resources to not create frustration. And by the way, shouldn't you have rolled that out to everyone? This is the same as everyone having a laptop. It's that ridiculous. Like everyone having internet connection, it's that ridiculous. Everyone having toilets, it's that ridiculous. Like it's a basic. And leadership should have sorted out this years ago. Now, the reason why you can't tell leadership off, of course, is because they only had a year and it wasn't in the spreadsheets and it wasn't in the budget. But it is in 2026 because they've had 2 years. And if it isn't in 2026, my advice is leave that company, because they will not survive in the next couple of years because they are not giving people a laptop when everyone has a computer. It's mental. Now, if the laptop's not very good and it's Copilot and it costs them a lot, that's their decision. That's what they've made. If, however, you then use company sensitive information on an open, well, not even open source, on a non-paid for LLM, that's your decision, which you cannot do.
Yeah, the non-paid,
Yeah, you pay the £20 a month. I know you might think, oh, it's £20 a month. It's very little. It's like 3 drinks in London. Just do that, pay that, and then protect yourself if someone else comes for you when you haven't done that. So just do it as an insurance policy. Also, your AI experience will be 10 times better. So why wouldn't you do that anyway? Like, take some agency, invest in yourself, invest in the future, because that's the future of your own work. And if you really want to push the boat out, don't just have one intern, don't have one, as I call them, automated interns, aka AI. You have 3. So you don't just pay for ChatGPT, you pay for Gemini and you pay for Claude, because each one of them is better at a different thing.
Slightly different things, yeah.
And then you just have a company together and you basically go, okay, I need to do this. but Gemini's really good with data, ChatGPT is really good with ideas, Claude's really good at writing, and you have 3 people working for you, 3 people that don't really exist, but do it magically, who you can tell off all the time and never have to be nice to. Like, it's my version of heaven. Like, in real life, I'm terrible at managing people.
Anything else you want to add, Janet?
I think, I mean, as soon as he mentioned toilets, I was thinking we should probably wrap up now. That AI is as basic as having toilets. I'm like, I think we've come full circle. I think we're good.
Excellent. Well, I really want to thank you, Dan, for speaking with us. We could have easily taken this for another hour.
Oh, 100%.
But certainly you've given us a lot to think about. You've given us a lot to do. You've given us a lot to worry about, and you've given us a little to be optimistic about. So thank you very much for this.
And a lot to pay for.
Again, honestly, and I know it sounds awful, maybe because I'm self-employed. It's not. It's literally an investment in yourself. It's not.
No, I agree.
You're safeguarding against you becoming obsolete, which I think has to be worth more than £20 a month. And if you are honestly thinking, I can't afford to do this, then you have to look at your own personal budget. And you have to realize some things have got to go. Like having a Netflix, I know it sounds awful, but having Netflix is not as important as having AI. It isn't right now, because in the next 6 months, one of them is going to create you a future. The other one's going to mean that you watch a couple of movies that you like. Like it's about, within the next 5 years, you've got to realize
that if you're not using AI, you might be watching an awful lot of Netflix going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I most probably should have just said that. Yeah, if you don't use AI, you might watch Netflix. Some people will really like to watch Netflix forever, but I just don't think the government's going to pay you to do it. That's the thing. Anyway, that's a different conversation about universal basic.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was a hell of a conversation. It really, puts us in a position where, on the one hand, there's a lot coming and we can easily get overwhelmed, but there's also a lot we can do to become more agile, more proactive, and more fluid in the way this stuff operates, so that when stuff swirls around us, we can at least adapt as the situation warrants.
I thought Dan was really clear, and I thought he was really, I think there's a way of framing this which sounds very conflict-driven and almost macho, and I think there are ways that we can reframe that. And the one thing that I kept, as we both said at the end, we could have talked to him for like at least another hour, because there were so many other places that we wanted to go with this. One of the things that I'm really, and it just consolidated this for me, was we need to understand how we do what we do and why we do what we do. And then we can help and figure out where AI fits into those processes and how that fits. And I know the process word is not sexy, but I am convinced that there are too many, and I because I've seen it too many times, teams who, when you ask them, so how does that work? That thing that you do on a weekly, monthly, whatever basis. And they don't know. They don't have a set process. And they are beaten about by the business who decides that they're going to put their own processes over the top of it. And so if you don't know how you operate, if you don't know how you do what you do and why you do it, then how can you use these tools in order to enhance that, or to be able to outsource, as Dan was saying, with multiple different AIs that are actually doing slightly different things for you? If you don't understand where they fit into your process, if you don't understand when to bring them in, when to use them, when not to use them. And so I'm still coming back to that as a very fundamental thing for communication professionals to get a control of, is figure that out first. And alongside that, go play with some stuff. Like, this is a test. Go test and learn. Go play, go experiment. And, I'm not a huge fan of using AI for the sake of AI because, the sustainability piece and the water that it uses and the energy that it uses. But use this to actually help you do some simple things so that you can start to understand where this fits into your world. Because otherwise you are going to get left behind.